Ray Stevens wasn't the kind of guy who did things halfway. Not in the ring, not in life. When he wrestled, he was sharp, mean, and way ahead of his time. When he wasn't wrestling, he was living fast, living wild, and burning bright. Fans knew him as the crippler, the villain, the guy who could get an entire arena so mad that people would pay money just to come back and boo him even louder the next week. And then he would step into the ring and hit moves that looked like they could break your neck for real. Here's what's crazy. Stevens started wrestling before most kids his age could even drive. 15 years old. Think about that. While other teenagers were worried about homework and learning stick shift, Stevens was already working matches for promoter Al Haft. And he didn't just learn wrestling. He absorbed it. He picked up every detail, every trick. He also had the perfect teacher, Buddy Rogers, the original Nature Boy. Rogers was one of the biggest stars of that time, and he showed Stevens how to be cocky, how to strut, how to make people absolutely hate you but still want to see you. That lesson stuck. By 17, Stevens wasn't just some kid hanging around backstage. He was headlining. He even feuded with Gorgeous George. That was huge. Gorgeous George was one of the biggest names in the business, and Stevens went toe-to-toe with him. What really set him apart wasn't just the wrestling, it was his mouth. Ray Stevens could rip into a crowd like nobody else. He would insult their hometowns, mock their accents, laugh at their sports teams, and bury their heroes. In San Francisco, he went so hard at the city itself that fans showed up week after week just for the chance to boo him louder. That's how good he was. That's the art of being a heel. And here's the funny part. If you looked at him, he didn't exactly scream pro athlete. He was about 5'8", 230 pounds, with a belly that made him look more like a tough guy you'd find at a bar than a wrestler. But when the bell rang, none of that mattered. He was a machine. His timing was spot on. His bumps, the way he threw himself around to make moves look brutal, were second to none. And then there was his finisher, the bombs-away knee drop. Picture this. Stevens climbs to the top rope, jumps off, and drives his knee straight into his opponent's throat. Back then, nobody was doing stuff like that. It looked dangerous because it really was dangerous. He also had a pile driver that looked absolutely nasty. Fans believed because Stevens made them believe. As good as he was on his own, Stevens was just as incredible in tag teams. Early on, he teamed with Don Fargo, then Roy Shire, and they even won the NWA World Tag Team titles in 1959. But the team everyone still talks about was the Blonde Bombers, Stevens and Pat Patterson. Here's the cool part. They started as rivals, but when they teamed up, they clicked instantly. Patterson even dyed his hair blonde to match Stevens. Together, they were unstoppable, winning belts, headlining shows, and changing what people thought tag team wrestling could be. Patterson would later say teaming with Stevens taught him more about wrestling than anything else. But Stevens wasn't just a tag guy. His singles feuds were just as hot. His rivalry with Pepper Gomez in California is still legendary. Gomez was the ultimate good guy, handsome, athletic, and loved by the fans. Stevens was his perfect opposite, cocky, mean, and always ready to cheat. Their matches packed the Cow Palace in San Francisco and the Civic Auditorium in San Jose. Promoters dream of that kind of reaction. And then came 1963. That feud hit a breaking point. One night, Gomez snapped. In the middle of the match, he grabbed the timekeeper's bell. Not a prop, the real thing. Heavy, solid, and he swung it at Stevens. It landed hard. Stevens dropped like a rock. At first, the crowd thought it was just Stevens doing what he always did, selling it perfectly. But this time, he didn't move. He was out cold. The arena went silent. He had to be rushed to the hospital. Luckily, he woke up the next day without permanent damage. But here's the twist. The press loved it. The San Francisco Examiner ran a headline calling it "A Touch of Realism at the Cow Palace." Instead of saying, "This could have been tragic," they hyped it as excitement. And the fans loved it too. In their eyes, it blurred the line between fake and real. Stevens, always the pro, rolled with it. He used it to add even more to his legend. That's really what made him special. Stevens didn't just play the villain, he lived it. He made you believe. Whether it was with his insults, his dirty tactics, or his dangerous-looking moves, he gave fans no reason to doubt what they were seeing. His career lasted over 40 years. He wrestled everywhere: California, Minnesota, the Carolinas, the AWA, the NWA. He went toe-to-toe with names like Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel, and Crusher Lasowski, and younger wrestlers studied him closely. Ric Flair, Bobby Heenan, Pat Patterson, they all said the same thing. Ray Stevens influenced them. He shaped their styles. He taught them timing. He taught them how to talk, how to work a crowd, how to make every single second in the ring count. Because Ray Stevens wasn't just another guy in wrestling, he was the guy other wrestlers watched. And that's why, decades later, when fans talk about the greatest heels of all time, the Crippler still gets his name called. Ray Stevens outside the ring was exactly what you'd expect if you watched him inside it. The cocky grin, the rule-breaking swagger, the reckless energy. None of it was an act. That was him, morning to night. He didn't slow down when the matches ended. If anything, the nights after the shows were even wilder than the fights themselves. He loved speed, cars, motorcycles, boats. If it moved fast, he wanted to push it faster. He lived for the rush. People around him used to say he wasn't happy unless there was some kind of risk. He didn't just play a daredevil in the ring, he carried it into every part of his life. And when he wasn't chasing speed, he was chasing trouble. Bar fights, heavy drinking, women in every city. Stories about his nightlife became just as legendary as his matches. This lifestyle made him fascinating, but it also made him fragile. In 1969, the brakes finally hit, though not hard enough to stop him. He crashed his motorcycle and snapped his leg. For most people, that would have been a wake-up call. For Stevens, it was a speed bump. He was back in the ring after healing, still putting on matches that made fans believe, and still carrying less talented wrestlers to better performances. The injury slowed him down, but never stopped him. He refused to let it. Stevens also had his share of fights with the government. He got into tax trouble more than once, and it fit perfectly with the man's character. He hated authority. He hated being told what to do. Just as he laughed at referees inside the ring, he shrugged off officials outside it. The IRS wasn't going to change him any more than promoters or doctors could. Even with all his skill, all his charisma, and all the money he drew for promoters, Stevens never wore the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. That always puzzled fans. How could someone that good never get the belt? The truth is simple. Promoters couldn't rely on him to live like a champion. It wasn't about talent. It wasn't about his body breaking down. It was about his priorities. Stevens himself joked about it more than once. He would say that main events got in the way of his drinking and womanizing. He was honest about it. Wrestling was his job. The fast life was his passion. The title belt came with pressure and responsibility, with long schedules and endless travel. Stevens didn't want that kind of leash. He preferred to wrestle when he wanted, party when he wanted, and live on his own terms. Promoters saw it as unreliability, but for him it was freedom. That choice is what made him unique. He could have been the world champion. He had all the tools, but he didn't want to play the game the way everyone else did. He chose to be the wild card. He chose the bar over the belt. And in doing that, he built a legacy that was different from anyone else's. As time went on, the cost of that lifestyle piled up. Wrestling is brutal on the body even for those who live clean. Stevens didn't. By the 1990s, his heart was giving out. Years of bumps in the ring, crashes on the road, heavy drinking and hard living took their toll. In 1995, doctors cut open his chest for a quadruple bypass at Stanford. The message was loud and clear: slow down or die. He didn't slow down. A year later, in May of 1996, Stevens died at his home in Fremont, California. He was 60 years old. The cause was a heart attack in his sleep. The details of his last night make the story even sadder, but also so very him. He had been drinking brandy and beer. He had taken pills before bed. Less than a year after life-saving surgery, he was still living the same way he always had. It wasn't just a medical event, it was the closing chapter of a life that never once hit the brakes. Everything about his story led to that moment. The wrestling style that punished his body, the crashes, the fights, the drinking, the endless risks. His heart had carried it for decades, but it couldn't carry it anymore. And Stevens wasn't the kind of man to change course even when the warning signs were flashing bright red. That contradiction defines his legacy. He was one of the most gifted wrestlers of his era. He was also one of the most self-destructive. He never became world champion, but he influenced everyone who came after him. He wasn't reliable for promoters, but for fans, he was unforgettable. He was both the best and the worst at the same time, which somehow made him even more compelling. The wrestling world didn't forget him. In 2006, he was inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. It was a recognition of what everyone already knew. Stevens had changed the game. He had redefined what it meant to be a heel. The cocky strut, the arrogant promos, the moves that looked dangerous enough to be real. All of it came from him. Wrestlers who followed in his footsteps studied him. Ric Flair borrowed from his style. Bobby Heenan took notes on how he worked a crowd. Pat Patterson, his old partner, said Stevens taught him more about the business than anyone else. That's the real measure of greatness. Not just how good you were, but how much better you made everyone else. Stevens could carry weak opponents to great matches. He could elevate tag partners. He could make a hero shine brighter just by being the perfect villain across the ring. Fans loved to hate him, but they also respected him. They knew that even if he wasn't chasing the title, he was giving them a show worth their money. He had a way of making every fight feel personal, of making you want to scream at him and cheer for whoever was facing him. That's the art of being a heel, and Stevens mastered it. His story is both inspiring and cautionary. It shows how brilliance and recklessness can live in the same person. He had the talent to be on top of the world, but he didn't want the responsibility. He had the charisma to carry a company, but he chose to carry a bottle instead. He lived as he pleased, and it made him a legend. It also cut his life short. In the end, Ray Stevens will always be remembered as the crippler, the blonde bomber, the heel who set the standard. But his legacy goes deeper than wins and losses. It's about the price of living without boundaries. He blurred the line between his character and himself until there was no difference. He partied, fought, raced, and wrestled like every day might be his last. And one day it was. He could have been remembered as a champion. Instead, he'll be remembered as something rarer, a man who chose to be unforgettable on his own terms. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more fans find stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you'll know the second we drop the next wrestling story. I want to hear from you. What do you think about Ray Stevens? Do you believe he should have been world champion? Or do you think his wild lifestyle kept him from holding that spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's get the discussion going. Also, if there's another wrestler or crazy wrestling story you want covered, let me know in the comments as well. Your suggestions always help shape what comes next. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, the best heels make you believe every second they're in the ring.